I do anticipate knowing more at some point tomorrow. I mean, he just obviously so Gabe, lower leg injury. I don't have any specifics yet, just because they're going through everything very diligently. He had some tests done yesterday. Obviously met with Trevor on Sunday, and he's got some follow-up things today that he's doing, and most likely tomorrow as well. And hopefully we'll know more at that point.
If he cannot go, does Steph take on a larger role?
Yeah, if Gabe can't go, Steph definitely has to take on a larger role. The good news for us is he's a veteran guy. I mean, being a sophomore, the amount of minutes he's played for being a sophomore is like, a junior at the same stage, I would say. So he's been there, done that, but it puts certainly more of a load on him, but everybody, right? And so Will is going to have to play more, and then we'll see after that if it's Boston or Luka or Jackson or Eli or whomever it might be. But we all just got to take another step. Obviously, Gabe led the league in 3-point attempts, or does. I don't know if he still does, but I believe he does. Okay, second in 3-point attempts. He's become more than a specialist, right? Last year I thought he was more of a specialist. This year, certainly he's an elite 3-point shooter, but he's also developed some playmaking ability off the bounce. And so it's a big cog. Obviously at times we can go up and down with scoring. You saw that against Oregon, where we get in these against certain teams where we get in these droughts, and so certainly losing a guy like that doesn't help the equation, but it's got to be a next man up mentality, and we got to look at, we do a lot of different things on offense, so we got to really just kind of refine who we think we are if he doesn't play.
What's your theme for this week, or your message to the guys this week to keep them on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a good group, but I mean, everything we want is still in front of us, right? And so, sometimes you can get too high and sometimes you can get too low. Usually things aren't as great as they seem or as bad as they seem. Obviously, we went on the road and got the split. You always want to sweep, but I mean, we just everything we want is right in front of us. And so we got to stay locked into what we've been doing and keep trying to find ways to get better. So I'm not sure we have a specific, like grit or Gata or, right? I just think it's, you get to this time of year where it's February or January 31st. And we just got to stay locked in mentally and focused to where we're trying to go. And so it was a tough, Saturday was a tough game for us. But like I said, everything we want is right in front of us.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, I know that you try not to get into the bracketology stuff and you try to avoid it. But is there a sense at least that if you can take care of these next 2 or 3 at home, that things are still really?
I think everything's in play for us. I mean, if you look at the way the schedule sets up for it, in a lot of ways it's perfect, because at the end of the day, if you're good enough, you make it, and if you're not good enough, you don't. And that's the beauty of it, is now we have a 3-game homestand. Obviously, this weekend's game, and then the bye week for Colorado, so we have a 3-game homestand, and then we go up against some really good teams. And so if you can beat those teams, right, you're going to jump the standings, so to speak. And so it's things are set up in a good way for us, where, like I said, everything we want is still in front of us.
You played a little bit of zone. Is that more zone than you've played as a coach? It seems like a little bit against Oregon State, and maybe even a little more against Oregon.
Yeah, we played a lot against Oregon in the second half. They were scoring on us, right? They shot 50% in the first half and got a couple easy ones early in the second half, and we just felt like we had to try to get them off attack or out of rhythm. We don't want to play zone, but obviously we got to do what you got to do, and we have it in our bag, so to speak. And our guys believe in it. That's a big thing too. We work on it every week, or for the most part. But the guys believe in it, and with certain lineups, I think we can be very effective. It was very good for us in the second half the other night. So it's something we'll keep looking at if it feels like the game presents that moment.
You're in the middle of the season here, obviously, but do you begin to have any conversations with seniors who have the extra COVID year, what they might want to do moving forward?
Yeah, we haven't done that. I haven't done that typically in the past. That's something I have thought about doing this year. I've never thought about it, to be quite frank. But, times change and things change, and whatever the evolution of college athletics, I guess you could say. So maybe those conversations will come up. I haven't quite decided that way, but I've never done that. I've always waited till the end of the year. There's enough things to worry about. But on the flip side of that, you're always talking about recruiting as a staff and trying to be a step ahead, and obviously evaluating our team and where we're at and what we think we might need depending on, what scenarios present themselves, right, with our roster. I've said before, our roster isn't perfect yet. It's not exactly where it needs to be. We have some really good pieces, certainly, and we've been able to knock on wood, win a lot of games and put ourselves in a position here. But certainly we got to keep growing it. And you go through the league play, everybody always says this. In the NCAA tournament, what do they always say? Well, it's a game of matchups. And it is. Basketball's always been like that, but I've always said the best teams in a given league, whether you're in the Pac-12, the Big Ten, the SEC, the Summit League, doesn't matter, the MAC, the best teams, the teams at the top, can win no matter what your style of play is or no matter who you go against, because you have that flexibility within the lineup and your style of play lends to that. And so, we've had good success this year, but certainly there's teams like Oregon we've struggled with, right? And it's not just because of the history of Oregon in the Pac-12. I'm saying, this year's team.
When you were recruiting Raleigh out of Montana,
Yeah.
back when you were at Utah State, and then again when you brought him here, were there any worries that he played in a smaller state against lesser competition, and how that would translate? And is that kind of a sense of pride that you discovered that kid and have faith in him and brought him to get him where he is?
Yeah, you always got to look at that, because that is always what's their level of competition? What competition have they played in? Can that person be set up for success? The thing that stood out with Raleigh is he's super competitive, super tough, and all he cares about winning. Of course he wants to play, but he just wants to win. He doesn't care what his stat line is. He's not one of these guys that after the game is running to the stat sheet to see, you know what I mean? He looks at what's the bottom line. He's a bottom line guy. And so then you look at his intangible, he's a big guy. He's 6'3", in high school he's 205, and he's kind of trimmed down a little bit. But he's a guy he's more athletic than you think, in that he can really slide his feet. He's very instinctive, so that's worth another half a step, right? And so there's a lot of those intangible things that are hard to quantify, but you know it when you see it. But you're right, when you're coming from a smaller state or city and you're not playing, he didn't play on this, the Nike AU circuit or the Adidas AU circuit or the Under Armour circuit. He played on a non-circuit, so to speak. So, and then those circuits, you're not always. But at the end of the day, you got to trust your eyes, you got to trust your gut. And we recruited him to be a playmaking guard at Utah State. We didn't know if he'd, be able to play point guard or off the ball exactly. And primarily, obviously, he's been able to play point guard, and we threw him right in the mix from day one at Utah State. But he earned that right, and he's done a good job. And the good thing with Raleigh, he just keeps getting better. He struggled a little bit the other night, but all in all, he just keeps getting better.
Kyle Whittingham has said before that he likes to recruit football players that also participate in track or basketball or whatever. Do you look for dual sport athletes? Is there a competitive factor when you look at kids like that?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt, and that goes back to Raleigh. So with Raleigh, just watching him practice football, and I know it's become a little bit of a joke because I always say how far he throws the football, but just watching him in practice, with his football team and the command he had and just those leadership traits. And then you just see some different athletic traits that you might not always see on the floor. Look at some of the passes he makes where those things are on a dime. Just watching the Stanford game yesterday morning, a couple of passes he made late in shot clock possessions where he just delivered it right in the pocket. You know what I mean? And it's just an easy shot for a guy. So I think that stuff matters. It's certainly not the defining moment, but I love when guys play different sports. I think it's you have to acclimate to other teammates. You have different skill sets that you have to use. You're training year round for other things, and I think it develops your whole, helps you develop your whole athletic potential that way.
Who will have the scout for Stanford?
Yeah.
more dangerous than some people might think.
Well, Tim Morris, Tim played at Stanford for 3 years on our staff. So when we were dividing up the scouts last year, we had to test Tim's loyalty right away. So we gave the Stanford scout to Tim. Tim also had the Washington scout this year. He finished his career at Washington. So Tim has that. Coach Chris Burgess has the Cal scout. Those guys both had him the first time around. Stanford, I mean, there's a lot of things I can talk about at Stanford. First of all, I believe they're the biggest team in the country. And they have elite size all the way across their lineup. I mean, all the way across their lineup. When Spencer Jones is your 2 guard, at 6'6", 6'7", and he's built like, Marco Anthony / Will Exact. I mean, you get those 3 guys in the weight room, and he's an elite shooter. He got it going in the second half against us. They're posting him up some as well. They look a lot different than they looked in December. We played them, I think, December 31st. So, they're just playing different guys. I think they played 12 guys that game. Now they've really tightened their lineup, and they're playing well. I mean, they've won their last 4 games, including a win against Oregon. We don't know our situation with Gabe, so we're trying to, if he doesn't play, we got to figure some things out. So it's going to be a great test for us. They're clearly playing their best basketball. They had a very tough non-conference schedule, and obviously lost some really close games where they just were on the wrong end of the stick, so to speak. So they're big. They're hard to score on in the paint. They switch 1 through 5 ball screens, and then they have a myriad of guys that can get it going. So you just got to make life difficult for them, and then you got to be able to neutralize them on the glass because of their size. They do a good job getting to the offensive boards.
Back to rosters and just the extra COVID year. In years past, you could look at your roster and reasonably say, okay, we have X number of open scholarships. The fact that you now have guys with extra years, who knows what they might do, is that a problem or is that a good problem to have?
Depends on the day. You know what? I'm not sure how to answer that. We're going to have 4 guys graduate this year. Marco Anthony's already graduated, and we know he's done, right? We sat on a scholarship. Brandon Carlson, Boston Holt, Eli Ballstead, and Jackson Brenchley are all going to graduate. So, those guys are all done with their 4th year. Now, Boston Holt, I guess, theoretically could have 2 years left, right, because he sat out last year. So he could I believe he could petition to get his medical. Yeah. So, and all those other guys would have 1 year left. So I guess Eli could maybe petition as well. So I believe the year before he got here, he had some things that he was negotiating. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's the name of the game, and you can sit here and whine about it or say it's a great thing. It works both ways, I guess, but I just know what reality is, and so you got to be prepared. You're always recruiting. You're always recruiting, and anything like our staff is what do we need? Well, we got to recruit like we need everything because we don't know what we're going to need. And that's the truth. You know what I mean? That is the truth. So that's just the name of the game nowadays.